Hi everyone, my name is Monique, and today I'm going to be showing you how to play a game that is currently on Kickstarter called Moon Bunny, designed by Pauline and Marie Wong, and published by Hot Banana Games, who are helping sponsor this video. In Moon Bunny, players play as bunny alchemists who must lead their bunny assistants around the moon, collecting herbs and recipes in order to brew the ultimate elixir of life. This is a tile placement and tableau building game for 1 to 4 players that is thematically inspired by East Asian folklore. And so today I'm going to be showing you how to play it. But before we begin, I do need to mention that everything that you see here is considered a prototype copy of the game, which means things are subject to change in the future. For more information regarding the game as well as the campaign, I've included a link to their Kickstarter in the description below. Last but not least, if you enjoy content like this and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing. And with that, we are ready to begin. So if you'd please direct your attention to the center of the table, we're all set up here for a 2-player game of Moon Bunny. Welcome to the moon. Now, like I was mentioning, in this game, players compete to become the master bunny alchemist by brewing the elixir of life. Over the course of the game, players will be taking turns moving their bunnies across the lunar surface in order to collect both herbs as well as recipes and place them in a grid on their workshop board. And at the end of the game, players will score points for each of their recipes that they were able to collect, depending on how well they were able to meet their criteria, as well as the public recipes that are chosen by each player during setup. And so the game comes with over 100 tiles that are each double-sided, with one side showing an herb and the other side showing a recipe, which is basically an end-game scoring criteria. Now, there are 2 main types of recipes: those that score you a set number of points if you're able to complete them, and others that'll score you a multiplier. And so as an example, this recipe will score me 5 points at the end of the game if I'm able to place 4 different herbs in one column of my play area. This recipe, on the other hand, will score me 1 point for each green tile that's in my play area. Now, as for the herbs, there are 6 different types of herbs in the game, and you'll see each herb represented on 6 different colors of tiles. And so Moon Bunny is all about being efficient in collecting the recipes you'll be able to score, as well as the herbs you'll need in order to score them. And so the way that the game works is on your turn, you'll always start by moving your bunny across the moon. And so each player has 2 bunnies. We have a hopping bunny, which is the bunny that starts the game on the board, as well as a dashing bunny that starts the game on the lounge board. And each bunny moves a little bit differently. The hopping bunny will always move exactly 3 spaces in an orthogonal direction. And so as an example, if I were the purple player, I could move 1, 2, 3, and then I would collect the tile that I landed on. However, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. The first thing is you are never allowed to backtrack. So when moving exactly 3 spaces, I could not move 1, 2, 3, because you cannot move back to a tile that you just vacated. In addition, you can never end your movement adjacent to the tile that you just started on. So as an example, I would not be allowed to move 1, 2, 3, because this space is the tile that was adjacent to my starting space. You're also never allowed to enter or pass through a space that contains an opponent's bunny. So I could not move onto that space or through it. Although, what you can do, since this is the moon after all, is you can move your bunny off of the board, allowing it to reappear on the other side and continue its movement. So as an example, had I started my bunny's movement here, I could move 1, reappearing on the other side, 2, 3, and then of course I would collect that tile. Now you may notice that some tiles, such as this one, have a symbol at the top left-hand corner, and these represent mooncakes, which is a type of resource that we are going to be collecting and spending throughout the game. And so anytime you take a tile with the mooncake symbol, you're going to add this to your workshop board and place a mooncake on top of the tile, which you can now spend. And one of the things that I can spend mooncakes on is at the start of my turn, before moving my bunny around the moon, I could spend 1 mooncake in order to swap my 2 bunnies, allowing me to use the movement ability of the bunny that I had off of the board. Now, players can only ever have 1 bunny on the moon at any given time, and you'll only be allowed to move your bunny once during your turn, which means you must spend that mooncake prior to moving your bunny. And so this bunny is your dashing bunny, and they can only move in one direction orthogonally, but as many spaces as you'd like. And so as an example, if it were my turn to move, I could move this bunny all the way to this tile if I'd like to take it. Keep in mind, though, that this bunny is also not allowed to move onto or through a space that contains an opponent's bunny, so I could not move this bunny past this space. But again, if, for example, my opponent's bunny were on this tile, and I really wanted to take this herb, I could still move my dashing bunny all the way to the left off of the board, reappearing on the other side in order to take that tile. Because of course, the moon is round. And that's essentially how bunny movement works. Now, once I've swapped the positions of my two bunnies, this bunny will stay on the moon until I decide to spend another mooncake to swap them back. Now, going back to our previous example with Hopping Bunny over here, when taking a tile, you're going to place it either on one of the 4 available spaces of your workshop board or adjacent to a tile that's already there. You can also place it in your 1 storage slot, although players will start the game with a recipe already in that slot. But as a free action, on your turn, you can always place the tile that's in your storage in your workshop. So on my turn, I could, for example, place this tile on one of these starting spaces, collecting my mooncake, of course. And I can also add my starting recipe to my workshop, placing it adjacent to the tile that's already there. And now at the end of the game, this recipe is going to score me 6 points if I have the fewest of that type of herb. Now, in placing tiles, this game encourages you to place them in a grid formation. As an example, let's fast forward a few turns, and now it is back to me as the purple player, and let's just say I choose to take this tile. If ever you place a tile that makes it so that a recipe is now completely surrounded on all 4 possible sides with specifically herbs, then you'll immediately get to take another turn. Now, if the situation looked like this, and this player were to place this herb tile here, they would also get another turn, because the only possible tile placement spots are the 3 that contain herbs, since you cannot place any tiles below your workshop space. But again, they must all be herbs. And if by placing an herb tile, you're able to completely surround 2 different recipes, then you would gain 2 additional turns. And once you finish placing your tile, then you always end your turn by refilling empty spaces. And these are spaces that contain neither a tile nor a bunny in it. And tiles are placed into 2 different stacks. One stack that is comprised entirely of recipes, and the other that contains a mix of herbs as well as special tiles. And the number of tiles in each stack is dependent on player count. So when refilling the board, blank spaces, such as this one, are refilled from the herb stack, whereas spaces that contain this symbol are refilled from the recipe stack. And at the start of the game, you'll only have 2 of these pre-printed recipe spaces. However, anytime you refill a space with a tile that looks like this becomes a recipe placement tile. And so for the rest of the game, this spot will only be filled by recipes. Similarly, you'll also find crater tiles in the herb stack, and anytime you refill with these, that space will remain empty for the rest of the game. Now, the last thing is, in addition to spending mooncakes in order to swap your bunnies, on your turn, you can also spend 1 mooncake in order to purchase a scroll from the lounge board. Scrolls give players an ability that they can use 1 time during the game. But players can only purchase 1 scroll per round, and they are never refilled. So you'll have a certain number of them depending on player count. And so the game comes with 6 different types of scrolls, and they'll allow you to do things such as move your bunny diagonally 1 space, or swap the positions of 2 herbs that are in your workshop, or even replace an ingredient or an herb that's on the moon. But that's essentially it. Play continues like this, with players taking turns back and forth until either the recipe or the herb stack runs out of tiles. And just so you know, there will be many more tiles in the herb stack, they're just all off screen. And as soon as either stack is depleted, then you finish out the round so that players have had an equal number of turns, and then you play 1 more round. At that point, the game will end, and players go into end game scoring points for all of the recipes that you've been able to complete in your workshop, as well as the public recipes that players chose during setup. In addition, any leftover mooncakes will score you 1 point each, which means if you use them to purchase a scroll, make sure you use the ability on your scroll, because leftover scrolls will not score you any points. And at that point, whoever has the most points wins the title of the Master Bunny Alchemist. And that's essentially how you play Moon Bunny. Now, in higher player counts, there is an opposite side of the main board that contains more spaces for tiles, and you'll also populate the lounge board with more recipes and scrolls. The game will also come with a solo mode, and so for more information regarding the game as well as the campaign, I've included a link to their Kickstarter in the description below. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching the video. I really hope it was helpful. If you enjoy content like this and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing. Thank you. Bye.